I didn't know that she's going to perform, so that was a surprise. I have
Somehow
no idea how
I did
that
know that I knew this
slipped.
somehow,
Of
yes.
course.
It is not very often for me personally to come to a moment in a show or music or whatever performance where I feel like I am going to cry. Hello, and welcome back to the newest episode of What's on Vienna, our special Summer Between Season edition.
Your immersive guide into sometimes overwhelming world of classical music and arts events in the city.
So, the summer is here, although for those of you who are in Vienna, it is not very obvious, just as it isn't for us. It's been raining, it's been cold, it's been terrible, it still counts as summer. So the city music and cultural life is pretty dead, but there are many festivals just outside, and we will bring to your attention one other festival very close to Vienna, which is called the Grafenegg Festival.
Exactly. So it takes place in surprise, Grafenegg. And it's just around 1 hour from Vienna by train or by car. There is a castle there, very beautiful one, also worth visit. And there are 2 locations built specifically for the festival in 2007. One is open air, Volkenturm, the Cloud Tower, the translation, for around 2,000 people. And another one is a proper concert hall, 1,500, so very big concert halls. And also some other locations like Inner Yard and Horse Riding School. So a lot of possibilities to listen a lot of beautiful concerts. We checked the program and we wanted to highlight 2 concerts. Exactly, so you can start with that.
Before I introduce the concert, I wanted to make clear that we are not sending you too far away from the city.
No.
So in the previous episode, we talked about operatic festivals just outside of the city. Grafenegg is maybe a tiny bit further, but more or less the same, very accessible, easy to get to. So the concert I would like to introduce is actually a matinee, so something a little bit different than usual, and also of a period of music that I don't usually talk about somehow on the podcast, which is Baroque. Baroque music is a very interesting, almost independent world of its own, with its own stars, rules, historically informed performance practice, people, composers, and it's a wonderful, beautiful world to discover if you are not very familiar with it. Of course, as pianists, we get to claim and get early on the introduction to very famous Baroque composers such as Bach and Scarlatti, maybe Couperin, Rameau, everybody knows Vivaldi, of course, but that's basically it, maybe an occasional Handel. But the Baroque world is incredibly fascinating, and it seems like you can have an adventure of endless discoveries of all sorts of composers. One interesting thing that was my personal discovery is that somehow my bias for the, let's say, 16th, 17th century life of women, professional life of women, was that it was pretty much non-existent. And the fact that there were actually very successful female composers, especially in Italy, was a big revelation for me. This is very relevant to the program of the concert that we're going to talk about, which is Christina Pluhar and her ensemble L'Arpeggiata. Now, Christina Pluhar is an Austrian musician from Graz who started out as a classical guitarist, but then very early on discovered that her passion and biggest interest was in Baroque. So she trained herself and learned how to play Baroque guitar, theorbo, lute, Baroque harp. Then she is also a conductor, an arranger, musicologist, Baroque music researcher, just you name it. The list of her achievements, it's also absolutely spectacular. And the ensemble L'Arpeggiata was founded in year 2000, which makes it shockingly 25 years old. Very beautiful group of musicians, virtuoso player of their instruments, and at the same time the programs that they manage to introduce are always very interesting, very well researched. What she likes to do with the ensemble is also add a bit of jazz improvisations to music, and at the same time also find echoes of the same repertoire, so to speak, in very unlikely places. So one of the discoveries she has made is that a lot of the, I believe, 17th century Italian songs were found in Mexico as part of the Mexican kind of folk tradition. And this program, which is called Wonder Women, is dedicated to female composers of the time, has also one male composer with works dedicated to women, but at the same time there is going to be these works from Mexico, which I found very, very interesting. And so you can really discover for yourselves the female composers of the time who had huge career. Like literally everybody on this list were not like some obscure names or women who were like maybe barely allowed to do a composition or two at home under strict supervision of their husband. No. These were like celebrated, performed, well paid, also important, women composers.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I was sure that she's French. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I mean, I heard a lot of her recordings, but I somehow never researched her.
She's been living in Paris since 1992, which is even before the time you existed, pretty much. So she's almost kind of French, I guess. I don't know, like how much she still feels connected to Austrian musical scene. I don't know. She comes, performs like in Grafenegg. At the same time, she is also professor of early music in the Hague Conservatory.
Okay.
And the Netherlands has, of course, a very big, wonderful tradition of Baroque music. So it's no surprise that she's a professor there.
And the second concert is by Gewandhaus Orchestra with Andris Nelsons as a conductor, and Hilary Hahn, an amazing violinist with a brilliant career. Basically, she was a celebrated violinist all her life. I mean, she's very young, but it seems like she's been forever, no? Like since she's 10 years old, she entered Curtis, and since then she won a lot of Grammys, and she's also doing a lot of educational work, working with communities, outreach concerts. So very attractive persona and musician and celebrated violinist. And the program is they will start with Arvo Pärt, Cantus in Memory of Benjamin Britten. Then they will perform Dvorak Violin Concerto and Sibelius Second Symphony. By the way, Dvorak was working on this concerto with Joachim, although Joachim was kind of escaping him. I think it was around few years that he was sending him the score. Then he wrote to him that he is a bit busy, but he will look at it, and then he rewrote it, and it was few years it was going on. But then the other violinist was premiering the work, although Dvorak really wanted that Joachim will do that. We talked about Joachim in the relation,
the superstar
violinist who was very close friend of Johannes Brahms, and we talked about him in one of the previous podcasts when we discussed Double Concerto by Brahms. So very interesting program. I don't know if it was in consideration when this program was assembled, but it's interesting that all of these three composers are very bright, very representative of their countries, of their people. Sibelius is a household name in Finland. Arvo Pärt, Estonian composer, the most famous Estonian composer, and even with no regard to the country, for many years he was, I think, either the first or maybe the second, the most performed composer in the world of classical music after Williams. Yeah, there was, I think, a period of time like 10, 12 years, and then in 2022 he was the second or the first place. So yeah, very, very famous.
Well, a lot of people know his piece Spiegel im Spiegel.
Of course.
And it's also, of course, a very interesting piece for amateur musicians to perform, right? Because it's relatively accessible, but it is immediately
beautiful music.
Very effective and impactful.
Yeah, I guess this piece contributed to that. And all of these three composers are from the countries that had this period of time when they were fighting for their independency, and when this national movement was very strong in the time of Sibelius, and a lot of his music are people are connecting his music to this movement. Also Dvorak, and the embodiment of the culture, of the mentality, character, folks music, and Arvo Pärt in a different way, also a different time, second part of 20th century, different socio-political situation, but
also different
very
aesthetic.
Proud citizenship, and he returned to Estonia and he lives in Estonia now, although he was escaping Soviet Union back then. So very interesting connection.
It might be worth mentioning that Andris Nilsson himself is Latvian. So the program kind of stays a little bit in the region, kind of. Not quite, but a little bit,
I mean, there are nice connections. And completely accidentally, these two concerts are happening on one day. So basically what we are suggesting is to spend the whole day in Grafenegg.
That would be 24th of August.
Yes. So in the morning, matinee, 11 or something like that. Then they have a final concert of their workshop with composers and conductors. Every year they have a composer in residence. So this year is
Argentinian, right?
Exactly,
composer?
yes, Fabian Panizello. And so after this final concert, they will plant a tree, the composer's tree. There is a tradition to plant, so you can participate in that, then have a nice meal. There is a restaurant there, and then you can go to evening concert with a nice introduction by musicologists and experts before the concert. So might be a lovely day to spend.
Yes, definitely a recommendation. I myself really have a particular fondness towards summer music festivals, but not only. In general, summer festivals have a particular aura about them and atmosphere, especially if they are in outdoors locations. They are mostly in just absolutely picturesque places, especially in Europe, next to some wonderful ruins or active castles, and it's just like almost fairy tale like experience at times to go to them. And this summer we had the joy and luck to attend several summer festivals. Most of them we will not be mentioning because they were not in Austria or anywhere near Vienna, unfortunately. But one was in Vienna, and this is the mentioned in the previous episode, ImPuls Tanz Festival in Vienna. We were trying to see this particular show for some time, and we were chasing tickets, and we were kind of trying to make things line up and work the way that we would be able to see it in a different place. Didn't work out, and then the show came to Vienna, straight to us, to the Academy Theater in Vienna, and it was magnificent. And the show I'm talking about is Brel, dedicated to and based on the music and art of the great Jacques Brel by
Andris Kersmacher.
Yes, so this will be our review now today, the show itself, what we thought about it and how it went.
Somehow I was not aware that she's going to dance in this show. I was sure that it's her choreography, although I know that she's still dancing a lot, although she's 65 years old, and it's not so often I have to say in the recent years there are a lot of productions with all the age. So, and it's beautiful. I adore this process. It's fantastic. I didn't know that she's going to perform, so that was a surprise. I have no idea how that slipped. Of course. Yeah. So she was performing with a young dancer, her former student, and the dancer of her company. Dance company. The name was
Solal Mariot.
Wonderful dancer, wonderful. So maybe we will describe a tiny bit how it looked. Most of the time it was a dark background, microphone on the stage, and the circle of light. There was a lot of work with this light. It was moving. At some point also the dancer was kind of escaping it and then running into it. Then there was a text of the songs in French, Flemish and English. And at one point there was a recording of his performance, and at one point there was some footage.
Video recording, you mean?
Just video recording, footage from, like, historical footage, which was really aligned with a song, of course. And 90 minutes of show, it was like selection of songs. How did you find the order, the dramaturgy of the songs?
I found it exceptional. I will go a little bit backwards. I know that, not backwards, a little bit back. I know that she has staged choreography to works by the most exceptional composers. Her taste in music is also really fantastic, and she's done shows on music from Bach to Steve Reich, everything in the middle, Bartok, I don't know, just Mozart, and a lot of composers. And somehow in my mind I was expecting that her selection of songs and music will work for the choreography, but it was difficult for me to imagine. Somehow it's easy to imagine choreography for Bach easier than it was for Brel, and to construct a whole drama, because not in the least you are a little bit put in a certain cage, if you will, by the text of the songs. French chanson, you can call it, right? It's still French chanson, is so particularly expressive and depends so much on the poetry that it felt like it could be limiting. But it was absolutely remarkable the way they managed to construct a whole story, whole drama from beginning to the end of this 90 minutes through the songs of Jacques Brel. I thought it was exceptional. It was really fantastic, in my opinion.
It was very strong start with The Devil, the song Ça Va, which immediately gave all this a bit of a political context, because the song is about the devil who comes to Earth, and then he sees the wars are going on.
He's quite satisfied.
He's very satisfied. So nothing changed in the last 50 years, even got worse. So immediately it gave very strong intention, and gave strong intention of the whole show. She started alone. After 15-20 minutes he joined her. They were wearing like very strict gray suits. They were changing a tiny bit. At some point she undressed completely with his recording projecting on her back. And I found the moment it happened and how it happened and the way the choreography worked absolutely amazing. We discussed it a bit, of course. That was one of the most vulnerable in many senses moment. And
very moving.
Yeah.
To me, if I may, it was also very interesting that even though you had just a spotlight and microphone, but otherwise no really visual cues of Brel's presence, except for these occasional moments that you mentioned on projection deep in the background, that the dancers who were in the front and with choreography and movement and sometimes screaming the texts and just like doing a lot, they somehow still didn't take away the spotlight from Brel, which was of course the intention. It's just remarkable mastery of how they managed to do it. That somehow even though there was so much going on, Brel was the main persona, which of course is a huge testament to him as an artist, and also a huge testament to how respectful they treated his work. And it's really wonderful and tasteful, you could really feel impressive that. And that was quite magical, I would say.
They also used their voices quite a lot. He was singing even. Screaming, of course, but that was also very impressive. And because, I mean, when you have a recording of Jacques Brel in the background and then you do it, of course, differently, but it doesn't really somehow, the brilliance of Jacques Brel doesn't highlight your inability. No, it was completely in time, in place, and beautifully done by a brilliant dancer. Yeah, it was extremely touching and very really amazing experience. What were the moments that you have kind of remembered as highlights?
Difficult to say because for me the quality of such a strange word, but it was such high level of artistry that it is difficult to say highlights. I was really in the moment the whole time and following the drama and the development of the thing, of the story, of the songs, of the whole emotional spectrum, if you will, that there were not really highlights for me. I think actually just now thinking about it, I think that if you have actually highlights, that means the rest was still inferior enough that you can notice them somehow, But I felt that it was just like development of the story and climax, but not really highlights. And it is not very often for me personally to come to a moment in a show or in music or whatever performance where I feel like I am going to cry. But this was definitely filled with the moments that made me feel also equally vulnerable to the artists and how engaging they were. And it made me feel very open with my own self and put me in this meditative state where I had the possibility to be introspective with myself. And I think this is exactly what art is supposed to do to us, but unfortunately it happens so rarely that you are transported into this state of active meditation and a self-exploration that it becomes a deeply moving spiritual experience. But it happened for me in the show, and I did expect that it would happen. I just somehow didn't know how it would happen. And
you never know, no? I mean,
you never know, but I somehow did expect something fantastic, and it was something fantastic. I just completely didn't know how it would happen and what it would mean to me personally to go through this process. And that was a surprise and an adventure and a revelation, because nothing happened how I thought it would happen,
For me, this kind of performances, when it's done on such level and with such fantasy and maturity and amazing experience, when it creates this miracle, then I have this feeling that we were approaching the life itself closer. Although it might sound absurd, it's because it's theater, it's dance, it's also artificial, human-made. But for me, it's where we come a tiny bit closer, thanks to the performers, to the essence of life, where this society doesn't matter, all these constructions, sometimes silly, and but the real diversity, the real fantasy and this beauty.
Definitely. And of course it gives inspiration to want to see all of the shows of the company. But dance, of course, does have this power of somehow really exposing our vulnerabilities, because in a way it's extremely honest. And not that other art forms are not, but if it's done with good taste, it somehow becomes very raw in a very good way.
And as she says, the dance is the most contemporary art form. I believe I'm quoting her correctly. Because the body is the most contemporary thing we have, like the most real and the most in the moment.
Wonderful. So, if you have an opportunity to catch this fantastic show anywhere in Europe, unfortunately no more in Vienna, then it's recommended beyond words to do that, to explore it. And we would absolutely love to hear if you know other works but by this choreographer. Do share your thoughts and your experiences if you have.
And we will see each other in the relatively soon, not in September, before September, but we will we'll come back to the previous dynamic of recording 2 times a month.
And this will be now our 2nd season. So the official start of the 25-26 season will be in September. So this will be our 2nd season of the podcast.
Thank you for watching, listening. Please subscribe, like, and comment.
And enjoy your August.
Bye.